We have the strongest military in the world. We have the greatest equipment in the world. We have the greatest manufacturers of equipment by far.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the Midas Touch Network. The White House just put out this incredibly cringe-inducing video celebrating the fact that Donald Trump has decided to change the name of the Department of Defense to the Department of War. Here's Pete Hegseth in that same official video, apparently reading from a script, explaining why this is such a great idea.
This name change is not just about renaming, it's about restoring. At your direction, Mr. President, the War Department is going to fight decisively, not endless conflicts. It's going to fight to win, not to lose.
Got to jump in here because not only did Pete Hegseth just say this new Department of War is going to, quote, fight not to lose, but they transcribed the double negative in the captions. Those aren't my captions. Those are from the White House. Anyway, continuing on.
We're going to go on offense, not just on defense. Maximum lethality, not tepid legality. Violent effect, not politically correct. We're going to raise up warriors, not just defenders. So this War Department, Mr. President, just like America, is back. Thank you for your leadership and your clarity. We're going to set the tone for this country. America first, peace through strength, brought to you by the War Department.
There you have it, folks. America is back because we have a War Department. The satire almost writes itself. But as cringy as all of this is, and I'm telling you, almost every vet I know is embarrassed by it, this is deadly serious because our so-called peace president is gearing up for war. I asked Julie Roginsky to join me. She's a former Fox News host, now a Democratic political strategist, and she just published a deeply insightful and equally frightening piece about Trump's march to war. Here's our conversation. Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. I've got Julie Roginsky with me today, a Democratic strategist, media commentator, and author of the Salty Politics Substack. I asked her to join me today to discuss her latest piece, Trump Unleashes the Dogs of War. Let's not mince words, Julie. We're talking about the President of the United States instigating, starting a war to distract us from his failures as a president. That's what you're talking about, right?
I am, and you have to put this in the context of who Donald Trump is. He's good at he's good at several things, but he's very good at one thing, which is marketing, and he markets better than anybody else. And now he is marketing the Department of Defense as the Department of War. Don't forget, they haven't actually changed the name because they legally can't do that, but they can certainly rhetorically change it. And so now he's referring to people who work there as war fighters, and it is now the Department of War. With Trump, the foreshadowing is always reality. He first pretended to be a billionaire in New York City while going bankrupt. And all the tabloids wrote about him as though he was some successful businessman. He parlayed that into The Apprentice, where he was broke at the time, relatively, when he was starting to do The Apprentice. But again, he marketed himself as some sort of financial genius. People bought it. And he did become very wealthy as a result of The Apprentice, which was built on a complete myth of him being a good businessman. Don't forget, this is a man who's bankrupted business after business.
Including casinos.
He's run casinos, which I think is like impossible to do, but he's managed to accomplish the impossible. Right. He bankrupted not one, but several casinos. And for those of us who grew up, I grew up in New Jersey, I live in New York now, but for those of us who grew up in New Jersey around Atlantic City, you only need to go to Atlantic City to see. Now I think they've torn them down, but the desiccated remains of the Trump Taj Mahal, the Trump casinos, all of them, there were several, all of them bankrupt. And while they were not bankrupt, I had to go to a few conferences at them, possibly the most seedy, disgusting hotel casinos you'd ever see. But the point is, that's not how he marketed himself. He marketed himself as the height of luxury. He marketed himself as a brilliant businessman. He was none of those. And now he's marketing the Department of Defense as the Department of War, which to me foreshadows what he intends to do. The peace president is going to take us to war. And in fact, he kind of already has taken us to war, not just internationally in Venezuela, which you saw recently, where the United States Navy, on I don't know what evidence, just decided to blow up what they called the Tren de Aragua, some sort of narco-terrorist boat. Maybe it was and maybe it wasn't, but the reality is we don't know. And also, it's not like they were posing a direct threat to the safety, security of this nation. If they were drug dealers. They should have been arrested and tried in the courts of the United States if they were doing something here. But that's not what he's doing. And I think as concerning is he's unleashed the dogs of war in Washington State. He's unleashed in Washington, D.C., excuse me, in Los Angeles. And now he's potentially talking about doing that in places like Chicago and New Orleans. And so you don't need to be a rocket scientist to understand what's happening. His poll numbers are going down. The Jeffrey Epstein situation is not going away. The economy is tanking. And what is the only thing that can distract you from the economy? Always. It's your personal safety and security, and that's war. That's called either an attack upon the homeland, like after 9/11, where that was the only topic of discussion, rightly so, or some sort of war situation where people truly feel like their safety and security is in danger, and that might distract them from not just the price of eggs, which year over year are actually up, but also more relevantly, it creates a war economy where you can start pumping money and getting people out of the economic morass that we're in by creating a war economy, which is basically what happened in World War II after the Great Depression.
Hey, it's Ken Harbaugh. Quick break to say thank you to everyone who's been following and supporting this show and this channel. None of it happens without you. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my Substack page, I'd really appreciate the follow. It's a great way to make sure you never miss an episode. It's free to sign up. And if you're able to pitch in a few bucks, every dollar goes back into the show. Just search for The Ken Harbaugh Show on Substack or click the link below. Thanks. I got to be honest. I used to give, I think a lot of people probably did, give the Department of Defense the benefit of the doubt when they played a video of them like taking out terrorists, right? There was just this assumption that they were operating in good faith and that there was a very high bar for them lying to the American people. There had to be a really good reason for it, right? They don't get the benefit of the doubt anymore. My initial impulse when I see Pete Hegseth delivering a briefing on taking out so-called or supposed Venezuelan narco-terrorists is, I don't trust him. He's lying. And, we saw this in the first Trump administration, news that is just coming to light about a raid in North Korea, inside North Korea by a team of Navy SEALs that was never reported to Congress. They are just so brazenly illegal in their application of military force that they no longer get the benefit of the doubt, which is really scary when it comes to that instrument of American power.
Yes, but don't forget, when we would take out terrorists in Iraq or Afghanistan, and there's a tremendous, as you all know better than I do, a tremendous amount of controversy about the drone program and whether that was the right thing to do. But let's give the presidents before Trump the benefit of the doubt to say that it was the right thing to do. And I'm not sure that it was, but let's assume. We were actually at war in Afghanistan and we were at war in Iraq. And the difference here is that Congress has not authorized a war with Venezuela. It's really not authorized a war with the Tren de Aragua gang. And if we're going to start taking out drug dealers, we're going to be bombing Colombia and Mexico and Venezuela and other parts of South and Central America. And we'll be bombing places around this country as well. I mean, what are we going to do now? We're going to start bombing people in New York City who are dealing coke to, half of Wall Street. Of course, I mean, that's the reality, including, I'm sure, to some people that Donald Trump knows well and loves. And so, look, the whole thing is a joke, but take it seriously. Because from the moment they changed the Department of Defense's name to the Department of War, and everybody kind of rolled their eyes and said, oh, this is Trump being Trump, and here's Hegseth pretending to, be a war boy. Take it seriously, because the marketing always foreshadows reality for Trump. He gets people acclimated to the idea. He sells them an idea, like he did for himself with his billionaire moniker, and he did for himself with his apprentice business acumen, and then it becomes reality because he wills it into reality by selling it and marketing it. And that is exactly what's going on right now.
We do have to shed this idea that because he's clownish, because he's cringy, he's not dangerous, right? We topped the episode with that video that the White House just put out of the War Department rebranding, which is just so cringy. I haven't talked to a single veteran who didn't roll their eyes when they saw it, but it doesn't mean it's not happening, right? It doesn't mean the world hasn't gotten more dangerous as a result of Trump. I want to read this line from that latest piece of yours. It is inarguable that in the few short months that Trump has been back in office, the world has gotten even more dangerous. Far from scaring dictators into doing his bidding, Trump has emboldened them. It's not as if his posturing, his marketing is actually having the desired effect. It's not scaring anybody. It's certainly not impressing Americans. It's making the world more dangerous.
Well, it's not impressing Americans, and it's certainly not impressing Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping and even Narendra Modi, who, look, we lost India. And it has been the policy of the United States from the Bush administration on to try to bring India closer into the United States. India always led the unaligned movement throughout the Cold War. They've always been very careful about aligning with either the East or the West. But from George W. Bush on, this country really tried. Within 6 months, Trump blew that up. And now the world's largest democracy and the second most populous country in the world, maybe soon to be the first most populous country in the world, is hanging out with its traditional enemies, which is China. I mean, India has fought several wars with China, and now you see Narendra Modi, who I have no love for. I mean, he's kind of the Indian Trump, but nevertheless, somebody that we have to deal with because of the size of the country and the size of just the connections between India and the United States. This is a country that should be a natural ally of ours. They are English speaking. They have a highly educated population. We have a tremendous amount of economic back and forth with them. Yes, I understand that they all buy Russian oil and they buy Russian parts, and India is actually financing the war in Ukraine to some extent. And so there's no excuse for that. But nevertheless, India is a country with which we need to do business. And what he did by placing not just these secondary tariffs on only India for buying Russian oil, and not China, and not Saudi Arabia, and not all his other friends, is humiliate Modi. And so, of course, Modi decides that he's going to show up at this dictator palooza, I don't know how else to describe it, in China last week. And what you saw was people effectively who Trump has courted nonstop, who he considers his friends, from Xi Jinping to Kim Jong-un, hanging out, and Vladimir Putin for that matter, hanging out with Putin and the Iranians, and now Modi in India. You know, they're laughing at him. And this is basically a message to the United States that they're not going to be bullied around by Donald Trump. And as much as he can go ahead and try to bully people in this country, and a lot of them cave, including, I suspect, and I hate to say this, the Democratic leadership from Chuck Schumer on down, he can't bully those guys. And if you've seen people standing up to him, he stops bullying them. I mean, look, J.B. Pritzker basically told him to go pound salt and not come to Chicago, and now he's backing off. He's not going to Chicago as he said he would in that stupid meme that he sent out a few days ago. Now he's kind of backing down. So this is a bully who, if you punch him back in the face, will back down. And the people who figure that out are the enemies of this country, from China to Russia to Iran to everybody else. I mean, look what happened last week. And this is after Donald Trump literally rolled out the red carpet, had Marines on their hands and knees rolling out the red carpet for the butcher of Ukraine, Vladimir Putin.
That was part one of my conversation with Julie Roginsky. Stay tuned for part two, hopefully later this week. We do have a lot of breaking news, but Julie and I talk about how petty Donald Trump's politics are on the international stage and how his weakness with other leaders damages America. See you soon.